Hey, it's Key McKay. Now, with the closing of Part A of Season 5 of Vikings, which was actually a really cool season in a whole, it's time to do a recap and review of one of the more interesting little side storylines we got through the whole season, Iceland. And we saw that Floki was really close with Ivar, and he was a real big mentor on Ivar, a really big influence on him through the latter seasons. Especially in Season 4, we saw him battle with him and help with ideas, so he is a real big crutch of Ivar's stability. But with the loss of Helga in the last season, we've seen him slowly spiral out into this kind of crazy little mode. And that's crazy compared to previous Floki, who was already batshit insane. But now with Season 5, we're starting to see the story and legacy of how Floki discovered Iceland and populated it. Now in this first big mega episode we got for Season 1 and 2, we see him first building his one-man boat and displaying his entire story and what he's going to do to Ivar. They have this really cool emotional connection, they talk quite a lot, they're very connecting there, and Ivar even sneaks on a navigation tool onto his boat before he leaves. Now, most of the upbringing of the sons of Ragnar was kind of cut away in that time jump, but I'm assuming that Floki was a quite cool father figure to a lot of the children, not just Ivar. So as he says later on in the season, he was quite happy that he managed to skip out on this entire conflict between Ivar and the other sons of Ragnar. And so he has his farewell with all the sons of Ragnar, people clapping off, because he's a war hero. He's someone who was with Ragnar from the start and had a lot of big influence in history, so he's still quite famous for being who he was. And so he casts himself off into the sea, the sons of Ragnar say goodbye, presumably for the last time, and pretty much all of his story is closed there in that one moment, and nothing really that important happens from that point on. Oh, and Floki discovered a new country after drifting through a raging storm. Or something. So episode 3 begins with Floki trying to recover from his arduous journey, using the resources available to him on Iceland. He's been tripping out mainly from his probably infections, fevers, other things like that, and is becoming increasingly more convinced that this island is a place of the gods meant for him and his people. And it's these hallucinations that really fuck Floki in the long term, as we see later on when he kind of oversells Iceland quite a lot. So really you can blame his deliriumness for the entire conflict of the season here on Iceland. Now in episode 4, like the last 3 we previously got, we don't get a huge amount from Floki or Iceland, but we do have this really cool dilemma in his mind. Clearly being in an island all by yourself in the middle of nowhere where you're kind of hallucinating and not really in a stable state of mind is not the most fun thing to do. So he decides he's going to head back to Kattegat and try find a devout group of religious people to bring to his special place. Though this is quite short, we do get the really awesome sweeping shots of Iceland and him running around and exploring it. It's really nice scenery, I'm really glad they used it. In hindsight of the whole season, I'm still kind of disappointed they didn't use the navigation device that Ivar gave him as a good way for him to get back to Kattegat. In that previous scene, we had that bonding moment between them where he's like, oh, thank you, Ivar, then he throws it out. They were kind of using it as this bond from afar and this kind of commitment to what he was doing. But it would have been way more powerful if he had found the navigation tool now that he's trying to go back to Kattegat, and he can use it to figure out where he was and how to get back to the island once he's picked up people. It would have been really cool because he would have had his own independent moment, he would have found it by himself with his whole lovey-dovey kind of spiritual awakening. But because of Ivar's love and him putting it there, he has a connection to the world. They could have been when he actually found it, he was rummaging through his boat, and had no thoughts of him even wanting to find more people. He was kind of getting lonely, and then he saw it, and it reminded him of the world, of other people, and that's what made the decision for him to go and find some other people and bring him here. It would have been a really cool connection to Ivar, really powerful moment, and it could have made the plot actually make sense. So in episode 5, Floki magically shows up and has 3 really important interactions with characters before he leaves. Now at first, he arrives in Kattegat, he comes up to Lagertha, has a nice conversation, they talk about stuff, and then he reveals his plans of how he found the Holy Land with the gods and whatever, and he wants to take a group of people there to make a settlement. Now clearly Lagertha doesn't really believe him or trust him, and she's kind of really wary of him entirely because she's got bigger problems to deal with, and she cannot have her soldiers running off on some crazy loony trip with Floki. We also see this last little conversation we have that has been this conflict between Ragnar, Lagertha, and him for quite some time, as what leads to his betrayal way back with Ragnar, and so much more conflict between them because he's always been more super religious, thinks he's really down on his faith, where he's viewed like Ragnar and Lagertha and stuff as more people who were there for political power, didn't care that much about the gods, more about fame and personal glory. Then next we get this really cool kind of conversation between Uber, which is the only son really left there for him. We haven't seen anything with Uber and him before, and the chemistry is a little bit off. It's clear he doesn't quite click on the same level as him, with his awkward little laugh at the end. It's yeah, you're a bit crazy. But we do see that Floki did care for Uber, and they did have a relationship of some kind, even if it was mainly with Ivar. Then lastly, we see that he's totally ignoring Lagerth's advice and all, and is going to go way under her belt, and is to escape with the people who want to join him in the new settlement in Iceland. But he also does one other thing, overblows the entire thing of Iceland, says it's a magical, wonderful land where the gods serve everyone's needs, and that's quite enticing to people who don't know it's a barren wasteland. Also note that Guthrum's there, which is Björn's foster child. So in episode 6, of course, Guthrum betrays Floki and the crew because his mother is like the top advisor to Lagertha, who is technically his step-grandmother, who has probably helped raise him quite a lot. Plus they probably added him here just so they could give him a little bit of quick development to shove it in the line before they cowed him off at the end of the series. So Lagertha confronts Floki, they have another great confrontation. It's like a real good chemistry back and forwards off them, with their history in between and her tense position she's in right now. It's kind of interesting because we see this kind of parallel between where Lagertha is now and where Ragnar was in Season 1. Ragnar wanted to venture to this new brilliant land of England where they get a huge amount of wealth and raiding and things, but the Earl was too stuck in their ways, needed defense, and wanted to go to the same old routes, just like we see with Lagertha trying to hold him and those men back right now. But with everything kind of surmounting against her, stacking up, and her reign seeming to come to an end, even in her mind right now, she's fearing her end. So does she really want to spend the rest of her time in this world clawing at a throne that she knows she's going to lose? So her letting Floki go was a really cool reflection to her mindset and Ragnar's mindset back in Season 1 when they were curious and they wanted to explore the world. One thing that stood out really nicely to me was when they were rowing away and they were talking about why Lagertha let them go, and the girl pipes up and she's like, because she's a woman. She says that Lagertha's willing to let Floki do the testing for her to see if there's actually a real place, and then she can use that later on as a long-term investment. Now with Lagertha not dying in this little season here, and maybe not even in Part B or even Season 6, it could be possible they're going to play out her history, what we see in the Chronicles, where in history she's supposed to live to a really old age and die 80 or something like that. So it could be a really cool thing to see way later on, maybe in Season 6, if she managed to escape all this conflict and live her life as a peaceful farmer like she's always wanted to do on Iceland, the investment she made with Floki way back now. Now we end up this episode with them arriving in Iceland and they're like, wow, that can't be as bad as it looks, right? He promised a lot and that's not looking like what we promised. Now right away, Avon is the more stronger and vocal of the whole entire group, as it's clearly obvious that Floki's misled them. But we do see that Floki does try his best to convince them to work hard and make something great out of the land they've got because they've travelled so far to be there already. And with that, we see straight away the setup for the entire rest of the season, where we have Avon and his crew not trusting him at all, not believing his words of wisdom, not liking Floki's position at all, and the other group's willing to give it a try because they've already been there, they really want to make this work. So in episode 7, they finish their tramp inland to the place that Floki thinks they should start their settlement, and it is not the place that they were promised, and they realize they 100% have been misled. It's not all bad though. They do have their own hot pool, which gives them clean, hot water to be able to wash their clothes in, to be able to bathe in. It's quite a useful tool, can heat them in the winter, but the land does look not exactly fertile farmland. Floki kind of suggests they have this religious cult, communism kind of weird community going. Others there clearly has to be leadership or some kind of lord, and we know that you're trying to go for that position. We didn't get an excessive much on that, it was just kind of the ending statement and they had a weird reaction from Floki, and that was it. One of you said the guy that was complaining to Floki could have been this person taking on the role of Eric the Red, who broke away from Iceland and went to search for better lands, which leads him and a group of the people he took with him to Greenland. And if that's true, it'd be a really cool thing to see because we get into a new location, we get to split over the people, it'd be quite an interesting storyline between the two of them, and apparently Greenland had some pockets of arable land, so ironically they could have a better settlement and actually grow and make their awesome society compared to Floki's radical nuts. And with that last scene of him confronting Floki about wanting to be king, I could definitely see that happening. So apart from the battle, we actually got some pretty cool Iceland stuff this episode. For one, we had the complaint guy going at it again with some pretty reasonable complaints. He's saying that we should be thankful that they've got food and water when they're just eating their short-term supplies and they actually haven't grown anything yet. He talks about how Floki clearly tricked and lied to them all, even though they're so stupid to think that his rebuttal when they'd already arrived covered that up. And he makes the good point of how they can't go back because they gave up all their lands, their family, their home, and their queen. They risked their entire livelihoods and everything on Floki's bet that they're going to go to some paradise land with gods, and they're not there. It's surprising that Floki still has so many people trying to support him, but he did choose the most delusional and loyal people he could find. Very hand-picked selection. So there's going to be this increasing conflict between the people who are more practical and want to survive and make a settlement, to where those who are more dedicated to making it a very spiritual community where everyone pitches in. It's also very clear that there are quite communist vibes throughout this entire place. I pointed it out, and it's getting stronger and stronger with this new group who's supporting Floki. The girl was having that quote where she said, "We must tolerate and love each other and put the settlement first always, and ourselves only after." So we can even see more division probably from those long lines as well, not only the spiritual and Floki ones. So over in Iceland, we have Davin still trying to undermine Floki's authority. So we're beginning to see the conflict in Iceland shift from Floki focus between these two kind of factions, this family here and Davin's family. Most of the actual conflict in this episode comes from Bull the dog, Davin's son, but clearly Davin's completely okay with everything that's happening, and he seems to have some kind of plan to divide everyone up. The whole arc of Iceland this season has been this kind of breaking of the myth that you can have some perfect society of loyalists or people who believe the same thing, because conflict always arises as people want to strive for more power, as people break promises, and the foundations of what people believe and what do start breaking down. Floki wanted this kind of lovey-dovey, everyone shares, everyone pitches in, kind of communal living where everyone was like ultra-religious and believed the same things as him, but that's just not how things pan out when you have bad ideas and bad foundation for what everyone believes and what the life should be there. So all of this is kind of compounding onto Floki's already erratic and crazy psyche we've seen throughout this entire series. Floki is not a stable mind. And finally, we get to see him react. He cracks when the religious ceremony is broken apart. Floki was playing all cool and passive like, pretending to be some kind of mystic, kind of leading this community, but as soon as his religious area was attacked in any way, shape, or form, he just crumbled. I still think it'd be really cool to see if David and his family split off, went to Iceland, and took over that storyline we talked about previously. But if this other family that's also in charge and kind of backing Floki sees that Floki is not the person they want leading them, and they begin to take more charge of Iceland, making Floki more isolated and someone weird and queer off the corner, because they really seem to have a lot more clear idea and driving passion of what should happen in this community. Okay, let's talk about Iceland, one of the most stable and chronological parts of this episode, which I really enjoyed. Gave us some stability from their crazy, LSD, weird, trippy-ass experience on the battlefield. So they have a funeral for Bull the dog, the asshole son of Avon, and Floki comes up with his mystic stick and his mellow tone. He's like, "Don't do revenge and stuff. It's not cool, bro. Like, we want to chill here. This is like a safe space. Be tolerant, bro. You could totally, like, not get revenge. You know, we don't have a justice system because we're free people here. So if you did want to do anything, it'd have to be like your own revenge. But I'm offering you lawmaker. Maybe you could make a law. So anyway, I'm gonna go smoke some mushrooms. You keen?" But sadly, Floki and this girl here, they find that the son that they were talking about has already OD'd on mushrooms. So now right away we see this entire idea from Iceland had just been a shit show from the start. There was conflict born from trickery right from the beginning as Floki lied to them all, made these outlandish claims. We had two factions pull apart, conflict pretty quickly, people not joining in and fight, and now there's two deaths, there's a cycle of revenge about to start, and Floki's just like, the only way I think I can deal with this is by necking myself. Now with everything happening with Logan Paul, I have to say this really carefully. Do not kill yourself. When things get tough, when people start killing each other and burning down Thor symbols, remember that you can always reach out for help, because luckily we don't live in Iceland. Well, some of you might. Fuck. So I hope you guys enjoyed this entire kind of review of what I thought of the Iceland storyline over part A of Season 5. Also, I want to announce that I'm planning to go to Con Thrones, which will be in May 25th to 27th in Texas, Dallas, which should be really cool, even though I am in New Zealand, which is going to make it quite difficult and expensive to get there. So, here's a sponsor. Enjoy. If you guys are nearly like me and you want to check out some Viking era books and stuff like that, there's some really awesome stuff at audibletrial.com/king. One book I'm having a crack at is Ragnar Lothbrok, The Tale of a Viking Warrior King. I haven't read much of it yet, so if it's a really good book, I will make like a review on and all this stuff like that, so you guys can check it out yourselves if I think it's good or not. But there's also tons of other really cool Viking-style books there, and history books, and all those sorts of awesome stuff in there, if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And I know some of you guys are Game of Thrones fans, and you can listen to the audiobooks there as well, and it really supports me if you guys try it out. So if you go to audibletrial.com/king, you can try a 30-day free trial there, plus get one free audiobook of your choice. It's a really awesome service, whether you're commuting to work or you're a YouTuber and your work is at home. It's great anyway, just try it out, audibletrial.com/king.